Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. I'm your host, Renita Ray Davis, and I am here today with Dave Rivera, MSW. Dave is probably one of the coolest, funniest, and most interesting people you will ever meet. He has been married to his wife, Tracy, for 19 years, and they have three children: Olivia, Lala, 15, Gideon, Bud, 13, Savannah, Ducky, 11.
Yeah.
Dave is a combat veteran of the Iraq War and was medically retired from the Army in 2015. This turned out to be the catalyst for him becoming a social worker. Dave graduated from Troy University in 2018 with an MSW and was focused in practice for several years with those experiencing homelessness and case management. He currently works as the world's first commercial maintenance social worker for a church, moves pianos on his off days, and plays jazz on the trumpet whenever possible. Turn your ears up, open your heart, and give this podcast a listen. Let's ride, fellow travelers.
Yeah,
Word.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Uh,
Welcome to the podcast, Dave.
yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Renita.
Yeah, we tried to do this a few times, and today is the day.
It is. It's meant to be.
It is meant to be. Dave, I always try to ask a icebreaker opening question, and I am curious, what did you want to be when you were growing up, or who did you want to be most like when you were growing up?
Uh, I know that I wanted to be a father.
Mm,
Uh, I know that. I remember specifically that when I was young, and I've been blessed with a wonderful wife and three healthy, three healthy kids. Uh, I know that's one thing that I wanted to be um, when I grew up. The other, I think, professionally speaking, I wanted to be. I think little boys they always want to be some type of fireman, policeman, or I don't know, Bob the Builder, whatever. I don't know, but I wanted to be. My grandfather was a veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. My dad was a soldier. I'm a military brat. So the that military culture was always had been ingrained in me from my whole life. I think I gravitated towards that. Um, Probably, yeah, probably a soldier. In the army, some type of way. You know. So yeah, I think that's it. I knew I wanted to be a dad, and in the army, somewhat. Yeah.
I love that. Dave, you know what? When I read your bio this morning, I was like, I was going to ask him if he wanted to shout out his babies. I hope they'll listen, and
Yeah.
that they can hear you shouting them out.
Yeah. So Lala, she's 15. But well, she'll be 15 in May, so she's 15, right? And then Gideon, Bud, we call him Bud, he's 13, and then Savannah, she's about to be 11. Actually, next Saturday is her birthday. We call her Ducky. When she was a baby, she had, all the this was all bald, and then she had this little feather thing back here, so we called her just, how nicknames just stick. So yeah, and of course my wife Tracy, this be 19 years next month. She's been with me through it all. So I'm very, very, like I said, I'm very grateful for the life that I had. I can't imagine. I couldn't have imagined 10 years ago. I'll get into it in a little bit. The way things have worked out for me is just to take a step back and see how God was playing chess, not checkers. It's like, man, that's so cool. Professionally and personally, spiritually, all the different areas that that we grow and develop in throughout our lives. It's just really cool to take a step back and be able to see. So
Absolutely. And when you said, and it was unexpected, I wasn't expecting you said that when you were little, you wanted to be a dad when you grew up. I had two thoughts. I'm a Gemini, so I'll often have a couple of thoughts.
Yeah.
But my son, who's about to be a dad for the first time, I'm gonna be a yaya for the first time next month.
Yeah.
I always knew, even when he was little, he just always had big dad energy. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
just
sure. Yeah.
knew that he was going to be a dad one day and he was going to be a great dad. And to hear a person outside of my little family say, I
Mhm.
just knew I wanted to be a dad, you don't
Oh
hear
yeah.
that. You don't get to experience that energy that often.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's true, man.
yeah. And then the second thought I had was about generational military service. My dad was in the military as well, and I often want to just make sure just to pause and say thank you for your
Yeah.
service. I want to thank your wife for her service. You know, spouses don't
Oh
often
yeah.
get that because my mama was a military spouse for 21 years.
Yeah. They go through
Yeah,
it.
they go through it. Yeah. So I want to
Absolutely.
thank Tracy for her service and thanking your dad and your grandfather for their service because that's what freedom looks like is people have to sacrifice in order for us to be doing what we're doing right now.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Thank you. So let's get into it. While you're
Yeah.
here, tell me a little bit about your social work journey and how'd you get, or a lot about it if you want to. How'd you
Sure.
get here and where do you want to go?
Uh, yeah. So that's a great question. Well, man, there's so many layers to that. Oh, and it's just like a red velvet cake at a church picnic. All them layers, you know. So, I my first experience with social work. My parents did foster care when I was a teenager, and I thought that's what social workers like. I thought that was I had a very narrow view of the social work profession.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was my first experience with social workers. And then when I was in the military, uh, after I came back from Iraq in 2009, I started having some adjustment issues. I don't really know how to explain it. I just wasn't myself. I thought I was just
Mhm.
going crazy is what it felt like. And so there was a big push towards mental health, and if you get help, this and that. And so I went to the behavioral health clinic at the hospital on post, and and the receptionist was like, she says, yeah, well, I'm gonna put you down and get you an appointment with the social worker. And I was like, man, what are you gonna what I don't need a social worker. I need to see somebody like a psychologist or a I didn't know at that time that
Mhm.
that social workers that how broad the profession is, right? So I was all mad, talking about, I don't want to see no thing, social worker, blah blah blah. So anyway, they connected me with the doctor that ended up being on call. As
Mhm.
it was obvious that I was in distress at that time. And so I met with the doctor, and over time, then I changed duty stations. I came back home, back to Fort Benning, and went to the clinic and actually started seeing a social worker for therapy, like on a regular basis.
Mhm.
And also at that time, they the army had I had started to break down physically, and just repeated injuries, just not healing properly. And so, she was helping me deal with a lot of different areas. And one of the biggest things was they because I couldn't do my job physically anymore. And so,
Mhm.
if you're in the military and you can't do your job, like they're like, bye, Felicia, kick rocks, dude. And so it it was a really hard thing to accept. And I don't know that I mean I've accepted it now. I
Mhm.
feel like, now that, it's been, this year will be 10 years, right?
Mm.
But I mean those first 5 years, like, I mean, I just, I couldn't accept it. But one of the looking back, I see that the skills and the coping techniques and everything that I learned sitting on that couch, with that social worker, was things that I brought with me that were, reinforced through the theories and stuff that I learned in graduate school. And then I was able, to continue therapy with a great neuropsychologist,
Mhm.
and kind of put all the pieces together, and to be where I'm at today. But it was her. Uh, Shout out to Miss Clute. I don't know if you're watching this or whatever. You're the truth. You're the
Yes.
truth, Miss Clute. Thank you for everything.
Mm.
But yeah, she actually advocated for me. I had one of the a psychiatrist, because there was sometimes I was having, I mean, I was in a bad place, and I ended up being admitted a few
Mhm.
times. And the one of the psychiatrists, who was an army officer, he was a major. He actually was implying to my command that I was malingering, which is,
Mm.
avoiding duty and faking. And dude, Miss Clute was like, "What? This dude ain't, you better go, and she, put
All
it
of it.
down. And then, yeah, and actually what she did was, uh one of her colleagues in the clinic, one of the psychologists, actually, she advocated for me to have some very in-depth testing done,
Mhm.
because I was going to show, one way or the other, what was going on. And yeah, so we got the test read, and that was, pretty much along with that, plus the physical stuff, was the end of my military career. I was separated, and I had some big time adjustment stuff, going to civilian life. So I tried to stay retired for about a year, and then I was like, man, I need to do something. Dave, you need to do something with your life. What are you gonna do? You need to make a difference. And I was like, oh man, oh, I'll be a social worker.
Love it.
And so I had, uh applied to Troy, and got accepted. And I think that was in 2016. It was, I was, my bachelor's degree is in music. So, I was in the 2 year program at 2 year MSW program at Troy. Um, Graduated in 2018. And man, that cohort
Mhm.
was, oh man, y'all, some of the best people. Yeah, Catherine, Jessica, man, just some of the best people. I learned so much. I learned so much, from them, from you, Renita,
Mhm.
from Dr. Duffy. Man, the whole experience was just amazing. Um, so then during that, my first internship was at a residential treatment facility, group home, for boys. It was a step down facility, so they were pretty much fresh out of the lockdown facility, in a group home environment. And that was uh, that was eye opening.
Mhm.
Just reading over some of the cases, trying to learning how to do groups and interviews, and just seeing, how the how angry these young men were. It was such an eye opener. And actually, I mean, you remember, I ended up quitting. Like, just where I was like, man, I can't. This ain't for me. Like, I can't do it. And then So I had this professor, see, I had this professor. Uh, she called me and said, "You better get your blankety blank behind back home." And so anyway, so I went back. They allowed me to come back, um, and
Didn't tell nobody you were quitting. Just up and quit.
man, I just yeah, it was just it. I'll tell you, y'all, for those of you who work with that population,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, my sister works. She's a counselor at the youth detention. The I don't know what they call it. They back in the day they called it the YDC. Anyway, she works with
Hmm.
the the. I'm trying to think of what the program. But basically, the sex offenders. She
Hmm.
runs their program. That's her area. So I don't know how she does it. I don't know how any of y'all do it. But it'll let you know if it's for you real quick, and it
Yeah.
sure did. It sure did for me. So I finished that internship, and then the next year I ended up landing an internship with the United Way, working with the homeless, which I absolutely loved. That is
Mhm.
my jam. That is my population. Um, Absolutely loved, love doing that. And so then what I was doing there was outreach and case management. So what I would do is uh, basically be up as early as they would let me be out in the field, which was 6 in the morning. And I'd be out there, on the walking along the river walk here in town, going to the encampments. Um, you know, can't really knock on a tent. You got to kind of shake it, jiggle the
Hmm.
zipper. So I'd be doing
Hmm.
that, and interviewing, getting people enrolled in the housing programs. And I love that part of it. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that part of it. It was, uh, what am I trying to say?
Rewarding.
Yeah, I was gonna say I felt alive,
Mm.
being out
Hmm.
there in the morning, because I mean it was I think one of the reasons why uh I gravitated towards that population. One of the things I didn't say earlier, one of the things that I always felt like I was gonna be when I grew up is a pastor or some type of in the ministry,
Hmm.
and I didn't really know what that meant. Especially at that time, but one of the things that I would always think of is that, you know, uh, I think that uh, if Jesus had a profession, he would be a social worker,
I agree.
and what I mean by that is, that he met people where they are, with no judgment, and just met them where they are, and to the people he reached out and was around the people that nobody else wanted to be around,
Hmm.
the least of these, and that's the way that I feel that that the people who are homeless, they're the the outcasts of society, from society's viewpoint, the people that are judged, get a job, just why can't you just get a job? Why can't you just get, well, hey, yo, it's not just get a job. Like, there's some serious barriers to those jobs, it's not that simple. And that was what I enjoyed about it, was that I felt like that I was doing the work that few were willing to do. Number one, there's a safety issue, going in camps, and that early in the morning. I mean, it is, I got better, I got better at reading body language. It was, and I think I talked a couple times about, you know, uh, reading situations, breaking up fights. I've had, knives pulled, people holding weapons. I mean, just all kinds of
Yeah.
different stuff. If I'm rambling,
You're doing good.
reel me back,
You're it's
reel me back
perfect.
in. Because
It is.
I'll just be like, I just the hamster would just keep going on the wheel.
It is
Uh,
perfect. Keep telling
so
us.
so I loved that part of the job, the outreach, the
Hmm.
and I want to touch on some of those barriers that I don't think that a lot of people understand. Those of y'all who are in the social work profession, understand that, but I think the general public doesn't understand, how powerful having access to a social security card
Mm,
is, how essential those vital documents, we take for granted that we have a copy. I'll speak for myself. I take for
mhm,
granted that I have a copy of my birth certificate, that I have
mhm,
a state issued ID, that I
mm,
have a social security card. I have access to all those documents, right? I have access to my DD 214 to prove that I
mhm,
was in the military and the
mhm.
classification of my discharge, et cetera, right? Those are all things that are needed, number one, for employment,
Right.
right? You got to have that stuff for employment, but also with grant funded programs, you
Mhm,
got to have that stuff to be enrolled in the programs.
mhm.
So during the pandemic, when all the CARES Act funds, was being filtered through the states, through the grants and everything, there was a lot of, there's a tremendous amount of, I mean, I don't want to call it red tape because it just seems like a generic. uh,
Obstacles.
Yeah, there was a lot of in my opinion, unnecessary documentation
Mhm.
that, you know, that that uh that they were asking. And I don't know if that was just an agency level thing or if that was a Department of Community Affairs requirement at the state level, or if that was, if the federal level they were at. I don't, like a HUD thing. I don't know. But what I do know is that what ended up happening for me was that I burnt out, Renita. Like
Right.
the administrative requirements of the job absolutely. I don't know if I just wasn't able to. I don't, looking back, I don't know that I could have been a lot better at self-care.
Mm,
100%.
mhm,
I was using a lot of
mhm,
substances to quiet all that noise, and
mhm.
what I found is that the the sustainability of that
Yeah.
lifestyle is very, very short,
Mhm.
some shorter than others, and then that balanced out with or marrying that stress, right? The stress of that job with, being a veteran and having
Yeah.
uh, trauma from that. And then the way that the amygdala, right, and all that, it's like my brain doesn't differentiate stress from danger. No matter how much I
Mhm,
ground myself, it ends up
mhm.
being a physiological reaction that is really. I'm getting better at it. I've gotten better at coping with it.
Yeah.
I definitely have, but it's still that initial adrenaline. I mean, it's there, and I don't know that it'll ever go away.
Mhm.
But it over time just wore me out. And I remember sitting there in the in my cubicle, uh, and man, I was like, I was over here like Fred Sanford. I was like, oh, come on, nigga, come on, let's get,
Yeah.
like my chest. It felt like my
Mhm,
chest was in a like a vice, right? And
mhm.
so where is I going with that? Sorry, my hand. Fredo, the hamster on the wheel in my brain, he just ran off. Let
He
me
just
get him back.
decided to take a break.
Yeah, he was like, uh, yeah. So I was like, man, man, I'm having man, this is not good. Let me go to. So I went to the hospital, and my blood pressure was through the roof.
Mhm,
It was like 185, 190 over like 125, 130. It was just like
mhm.
the nurse was looking at me, and that EKG was just like, man, it was like, I mean, it was going nuts. And so at that time, I was like, man, yo, I gotta do something about this. Something's got to give, because this is not sustainable. This is not
Mhm.
absolutely not sustainable. And it turned out that I was right. It was not sustainable. And so, I basically I burnt out. I had enough
Mhm.
of, and I don't think that it was so much the clients, although the clients, there was a lot of frustration. I'm not going to say that there wasn't frustration, with clients, but clients are going to be client. I mean, they're going to
Mhm.
be, they're going to be who they are. And, I think that, um, I could have also, looking back, I could have also been better at separating myself,
Mm.
from the work, and that's something that, being a naturally empathic person,
Yeah.
I was not able to do. And it was the same thing in the military, seeing the suffering, seeing the loss, seeing the grief, that was something that I took on a
Mm.
lot of, that in hindsight wasn't really mine to take on, and I ended up carrying that and doing the same thing as a social worker too, and it like I said, it wasn't sustainable. So I ended up leaving the profession, and absolutely just felt like, you know, I mean, when you give something, I mean, I really did love it. I loved it. But it just wasn't sustainable, and it was like, man, what's wrong with me? It's like, what's wrong? Why am I not strong enough? There's people who have been doing
Mm.
this for, 30 something years, working with the same populate, doing it every day, year after year. Like, why can't I? And what I realized is that, I talked earlier about that chess, right? The chess.
Mm.
Okay. So you know, I got out of the social work profession, and the timing was actually ended up being really perfect, because my dad was sick, got sick at the time. He has uh, pulmonary fibrosis, and was his health was declining. He got listed for lung transplant, and I ended up taking care of him. You can't do that with a full-time job. So the timing of it ended up working out. But then after he got, his lung transplant and everything, I started volunteering at my church, doing maintenance stuff. I've always been, pretty handy and whatnot. And then it was like, okay, well, you're volunteer. Okay, how about 10 hours a week? And then I did that. And it was like, okay, how about 20 hours a week? Okay, and then how about, hey, we're gonna bring you on full time, man. So then I ended up being coming on full time to the position that I'm in now. And so if y'all were listening in the intro, I said it read something to the effect of the world's first commercial maintenance social worker, you know. So what does that mean, Dave? Well, I'm glad you asked. Uh, so what I found is that a lot of times I work at a larger church here in the southeast US and in Georgia, and we get a lot of requests for benevolence. We have a lot of people who are transient coming knocking on the doors, and what I've found is that, to no fault of their own, a lot
Mhm.
of pastors and church staff aren't necessarily, they're not equipped to deal with that population. Their focus, is more on spiritual formation. So, they don't uh, like I said, they're not equipped to be like, hey, I know you have this barrier. I know you have this barrier. Like we talked earlier about the vital documents. Where can I go to get this? Where can I go? And me being in that work before, now I'm able to, to kind of, well, now I'm able to educate the church staff on some of those barriers. Because there was, I've had some church members, just because they're not they just don't know, just like the general public, why don't these people, they just get a job? And I find that, hey, yo, it's not that simple. And I go over all the stuff that I said earlier, and it's like I can see the light bulb going off, and it's like, oh wow. And it's so cool. It is so cool to see that light bulb go off, but not just for them. It changes the way they view the next guy that they see, or the next lady, or the next person that they see in that situation, and they're able to see them with the compassion that their religion and their faith is asking and requiring of them to view the world with. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, and they're able to kind of put it together in the same way that I was able to put it together. One of the other cool things that we've been able to do
Mhm.
at the church is there's a satellite campus of Point University, and they have a social work program. And what we were able to do, we had two social work majors that were bachelor's level last summer that were coming up to do their internships, and they absolutely could not find an internship. And so I was talking to them, because I see them in my work. I see them throughout the day. Hey, how's school? This and that. I try to pour into the
Mhm.
college students, and just like meet them where they are, give them what guidance where I can, and they were telling me, the two young ladies, they were telling me, hey, I can't find a supervisor, I can't find an internship. I was like, wait a minute. I
Hello.
said, well, first of all, I was like, hey, well, what are the requirements of your program, for supervision? What does that look like? I'm not licensed. I do have an MSW. Is that sufficient? And so they put me in contact with the program coordinator. I don't remember what the title is. And met with her, and discussed, some of the ideas. And what we came up with is, so there's a what I feel like. So that, first of all, the church is not going to be a
Mhm.
social service agency. That's
Mhm.
not that's not what this church does. Like, we don't have a food bank, we don't have a clothing bank, we don't have any of those things. But what do we have? We have information, okay, and we have ways uh, to help people break down those barriers, that red tape. So what does that mean? Well, once again, I'm glad you asked, right? So what we ended up doing, we put together this program, the CARES program. It was kind of already in place, but we expanded it, instead of just like what I call pamphleting people.
Mhm.
Here's a pamphlet, here you go. It's like, well, what if the guy can't read? Whoever,
Right.
it still happens, right? So
Mhm.
what we ended up doing was getting a list together of well, first of all, we went out in the community and found out, doing interviews, me those competencies, engaging, assessing, all of that stuff. Um, uh, where was I going? Sorry, Fredo ran off. Come back, dude. Um,
You did your assessment first.
yeah, yeah. So we go out and find, hey, what's the need? So a lot of it
Mhm.
was food, a lot of it was clothing, of course, housing, especially in this market. I mean, it's a lot, right? And so, we compiled a list of what the problems were. Okay, so now we know, we've identified what some of the problems are. Okay, now what agencies in the city, are set up to service those needs, right?
Mhm.
um, I was like, man, we gotta bridge this gap. We gotta build some bridges over here, man. We gotta. And so, what does that mean? Build a bridge? Okay, so just like give somebody a pamphlet? No, fool. It's so much more than that. So we got a list of point of contacts,
Mhm.
emails, direct lines. Because I mean, if you call to, you call the housing authority, it's gonna ring. It's gonna ring. Not everybody knows that, right? You got to send an email. All right, but who do you email? If you email if the info at you might not get a
Right.
response, right?
Right.
You got to email Miss Terry, right? You got to
Mm-hmm.
email, Miss Terry knows what's up, right? You got to
Mm-hmm.
email her, right? And so we were able to put some of that stuff into play, and really consolidate it all in a way that's easily accessible. So I mean, we're still working on what that looks like as far as adding it to the website. We have it in paper form, you know but I mean, it's a working, it's still, I mean, even though it's been since last summer, it's always a work in
It
progress,
is.
evolving. But yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at right now, with it, with my I guess social work journey. I don't know. I feel like I use it, the training and the worldview, the mindset, just like I said earlier, just meeting people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest thing, um, that's the biggest tool in the toolbox.
Mm.
That and the empathy,
Yeah.
and I think that goes a long way. I don't know if that answered that question or if
That
I just like that was like
absolutely answered.
I'm like blah, blah, blah,
No, I
blah.
love it. And you know what, Dave? What I love about it is you had your military experience. And again, thank you for that. That led you to work. I'm just going to name the chess pieces. One, before I name the chess pieces, I love that you were angry that they were going to give you a social worker, and they're like, "Oh Lord."
Yeah, yeah, no, I was hot, man. I'm for real. I was mad.
That is so funny to me. But you had your amazing experience, and I hope that you have access to your social worker and you can give her the link to this podcast episode when it comes out so she can know that we are thanking her for her impacting your life. But then that led you to coming and getting your MSW where I got to meet you, which was all amazing to me. Then you had that internship, and that was the expansion of your mind, the first with the boys and then with the homeless population. Yeah, how I saw when you were just talking is you wanted to do the work, and what we find out in the social work profession is the work is 80% documentation and 20% dealing with the clients. And that
Yeah,
80% documentation, especially during a global pandemic, it
yeah,
wasn't helping the clients at all. But
yeah,
then now,
yeah.
full circle, here you are getting to do the work and creating documentation.
Yeah, yeah,
Isn't that
yeah,
awesome?
yeah. It's a trip the way it works out, man.
I wanted, but I love that how that it was all meant for your good. But there was three things I wanted to speak to. One, I often say that Jesus was a social worker. I believe that with everything in me. He was on the beach line with the prostitutes and the drunks and the all the people, like you said, the tax men.
Yeah,
he
yeah,
was he was dealing with all the folks that nobody else wanted to deal with, and I absolutely think that's what social workers do. And so for you to say that, and then Dave, I don't know if I've ever said this, but because you're so handy, like you build or construction and all that, and then you have such a beautiful heart for people. I'm like, wasn't Jesus the son of a carpenter?
oh man,
and then
yeah.
here you are,
Man.
a representation of that in so many ways, not just with the heart you have for people and the least of these, but also with that skill set of the handyman. I know you have a business and all that, but two things we don't talk a lot about in this profession
Yeah,
is substance use as as social workers using substances to help mitigate or medicate what it is we do deal with. And so I'm so grateful for your transparency and your vulnerability and sharing that was one of the ways that you dealt with how harsh this work can be.
Oh
The
yeah.
memory that came up for me was my MSW internship was at I'd say at a place, and the social worker who was supposed to be my supervisor, just a few weeks in, she ended up having a stroke because she was drinking a bottle of wine every night at the end of her
Yeah.
day. And I
Sure.
learned then how important it was to do the self care piece, not through substances, but through actual self care, because this woman was pouring into veterans, but she was killing herself through substances. And we don't talk enough about the fact that social workers are using substances to just get by, to try to do
Sure.
this work.
Yeah, to just sustain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is related to that. Literally in supervision today, I think I had five women in the group, and three of them said they had high blood pressure. And they're taking the medicine, and we were talking about social prescribing, and doing other things besides taking medication. But they're taking the medicine, and their blood pressure is still high. And we were
Yeah.
talking about the chronic stress that this profession puts, and that's
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
thing we don't talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
And so you coming on and being so transparent, like,
Well,
I had to use substances and my blood pressure was through the roof. That the lady, they were worried at me at the hospital,
yeah.
is
Yep.
not a storyline we often talk about within this profession.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's true. I mean, it almost killed me. It really
Mm-hmm.
did. And I also too, GERD, the reflux from the stress. I mean, it was something that I dealt with for years, even after I stopped, drinking. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
still something that I dealt with, after. Yeah. No, you're right.
So that was one we had talked before you agreed to come on to the podcast, and we knew that this was what we wanted to discuss. That one, I love what you called yourself. I loved this. You are the first commercial maintenance social worker because when we had talked before you came on, I was like, you're still doing social work. Maybe the job titles aren't, but you're
Yeah.
supervising social workers, you're providing information, resources, and support. That's what social work is. And so for you to give yourself a title, first commercial
Yeah.
maintenance social worker, you're
Yeah.
still doing social work, but you're doing it in a way that's energetically aligned for who you are and what you can do.
Sure. Yeah, it's cool. I feel like it's unique just being able, like I said, I think a few times through this conversation is just being able to meet people where they are
Mm-hmm.
and just I don't know, just be a human, just connect. I don't know how else to say it, just connect with people and show love, it's a really unique thing that I get to do. It's really cool to see how all the pieces are coming together. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we had some other questions. And they're usually about the community or population. We talked about what your population is.
Hmm.
And I'm going to skip ahead then and ask you, and I think I know the answer, but I still kind of want to hear from you. What is one belief about social work that you started on this journey with that you think has changed the most for you now?
What you said about the documentation. It's like, and that was told, that was that was information that was not withheld from me when I was in school, right? I mean, you said it, Dr. Duffy, Dr. Wickersham, like everybody, like
Mm.
all the, hey, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. You got to document, document, um, and it's like it's like one of those things where like growing up, you living in mama's house, and it's like, just wait till you get out in the real world. It ain't no joke. And you're like, yeah, whatever, whatever. And then you get out in the real world and you're like, oh man, this is something serious. But it was like that with the documentation and the administrative requirements.
Mhm.
And that's what I found actually was what I couldn't handle. I didn't know how to deal with the stress of that. Now I don't I mean, yeah, I don't know. That was basically what it was, that it wasn't the clients that was what I couldn't deal with. It was the and I'm trying to make sure I say it in a way that's like accepting responsibility, because not the requirements of the job or the requirements of the job. It was my inability to deal with that mentally, psychologically, physically, emotionally, to separate and distance myself. So yeah,
Mhm.
that was, I think, the biggest thing that I don't know. Does that answer
It
the
makes
question?
perfect sense.
Yeah, that was
Absolutely.
that was that
Mhm.
was what yeah, that was it.
Before I ask, that makes perfect sense. Before I ask you the final question, and I'm excited about it. I don't even know what it is yet, but I kind of have an idea. I want to honor the hamster on the wheel. What do you call him and why?
Oh, Fredo.
Fredo, yes. I wanted to say he did a great job.
Yeah, yeah, Fredo. Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of The Godfather, and Fredo's his brother.
Uh,
It's like, I'm here with you, Fredo. I'm here with you.
oh Lord,
Yeah,
Fredo.
yeah, yeah,
I was thinking about every time you said it, I was like, we gotta make sure we give Fredo his props because he
yeah,
stayed on that wheel. He did his
yeah.
thing. He
He
did his
did,
thing.
man. He did.
Dave, this has been so great. And it's been a pivot from the usual story line
Sure,
that we discussed. And it was so important to me. That's why I kept reaching out, even though we were missing each other,
sure.
because I felt like we needed to share this part of social work because I love the profession. I've been doing it a long time. I'm helping people to try to be successful in it. But we got to also know that it's hard. It's hard on the
Yeah,
mind, it's hard on the
yeah.
body, it's hard on the
It is.
soul. And I appreciate you even stating um, that I, my Fredo just left.
Yeah,
My Fredo left. So you know why I'm going to stop there because what I am going to ask your final question,
yeah.
and I wrote about music. My
Okay.
sister's a music
Yeah.
therapist. I'm
Right.
currently reading The Creative Way. It's a spiritual approach to creativity. The artist way. I'm sorry. The artist way is a creative approach. Is a spiritual approach to creativity. And I know in your bio, you talk about playing jazz, and we were talking about your band before
Yeah.
we hit record. And I guess I want to know, with all of this, with the hardship of it, social workers had on your body, your mind, your soul, with you finding your way, your path into the profession, being the first commercial maintenance social worker. And I also know that music had went away for a minute. I'm
Yeah.
wondering, what does music do for you now, and how are you using it in your life?
Uh, I think the word is cathartic.
Mm-hmm.
Am I using that right? Where it's
You
like
are.
a lot of times. So one of the things about uh my brain up here, the gray matter, right, is that I've had like 7 or 8 concussions,
Mm-hmm.
and so communication is a barrier. It's not, I don't have brain damage, per se, but I've had some testing done, and it's more impairment,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so what ends up happening is that I have this huge amount of information, whether that be, feelings, thoughts, I don't know. It could be anything, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
a lot of information. And then when it comes to getting it out, it's like a 12 lane highway of information going to like a foot trail in like
Mm,
a city park or something. And so it gets all clogged up and choked up, and it's like it just stops. You know, it's like it just hits a wall. And what I've learned is that when I uh, when I pick up my horn,
mhm.
it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It just it comes out, and I'm able to get it out, and it doesn't have to. And the cool thing about it is that it's communicated. I can see it in the audiences. I can see it when I make eye contact. A lot of times I'll play in my. I mean, it's my eyes are closed, you know. But there'll be times, you know, where I'll have my eyes open and I'll lock eyes with, and I can tell they're with me. They're feeling. They're like my niece KK. She says, "I'm smelling what you're stepping in."
Yeah.
So it's just it's so cathartic. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing is I can say what I have to say without saying it. Does that
Mhm,
make yeah,
mhm.
that's the
I know I
biggest
said
part.
that was going to be the last question, but that was such a beautiful answer. And because my sister is a music therapist, I'm a
Yeah,
social worker. I
yeah,
think I have one more question.
yeah, hit it.
Do you think there's a place for music in the social work profession?
Uh, I think so.
Hmm.
I think so. I think that I was just thinking like I love doing groups, right? I loved that was one of my favorite things to do was group therapy, right? Um and that's how I feel when I play in a good band.
Mm,
Dude, it's
hmm.
group therapy. Like everybody's working out what they got going on. We're all communicating non-verbally, you know, whether that's eye contact or just locking in with what somebody's doing with their body, like physically how their posture, the way they're phrasing there is it's such a nuanced I don't know how to explain it. Especially specifically jazz music is so nuanced with the nonverbals and the so I think yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know what that would look like, per se, but I mean that's just my off the cuff answer is like a band is the band I play in is group therapy. You know, it
come
is.
through.
You know, so yeah, I don't know. Is that yeah?
Yes,
I don't know.
that's
That's just where my
perfect.
mind went. That's just where me and Fredo rolled off to. You know.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I absolutely love that you called it, especially that you spoke about it as group therapy, especially
Yeah.
when you're in a good band.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
because group is my favorite format as well. And so to know all the pieces that have to come together in order to have a good group,
Yeah.
um, and to do that with music and with nonverbals and still feel like you communicated. I had a client, we were talking and been trying to get her to cry, and we talked about maybe crying in the shower. You know, like
Yeah.
since there's water there already, let's see if we can try to cry in the shower. And we were talking, and she said she just belted out all of these love songs, and so she didn't cry, but she was still in the shower and she was still belting out
Yeah.
these love. And I think there's so much power in music,
Yeah.
and if sometimes if even if you can't cry, just getting a good love song, getting a good jazz band together, that will help you to express those emotions that get stuck. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
I agree with
yeah,
that.
that's beautiful. We're calling it, my new favorite thing right now is social prescribing. So if you feel like you can't express your emotions, We want to invite you to go listen to some live music.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
do it.
do it. Yes, Dave. I know that you're going to be playing soon, and one day I hope to see you live.
Yeah, I hope so too. Come see
Yeah,
us at the Getch's house every other
yeah.
Friday.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for joining the Guys is a Social Work podcast. This has been such an amazing episode. I'm so glad you said yes.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful. Very, very grateful.